Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very, very well. As always, there is a ton of WWE news stories to get into today. So let's kick off and start off with Keith Lee, because Keith Lee has shared yet another update, a bit of a cryptic update nevertheless, but an update about his status with WWE. And Keith Lee has said that an educational and inspirational explanation as to his WWE absence is, quote, off the table now. Now, Monday Night Raw superstar Keith Lee took to Twitter on Friday and indicated that he was close to explaining his recent hiatus from the ring. Now, of course, Keith Lee has been out of action since February, and it's been reported that he is not currently medically cleared to compete by WWE. Now, Keith Lee noted in a new tweet that he wanted to do something educational and inspiring to explain his situation to the fans, but something seemingly has changed, and that is, quote, off the table for the time being. This is what Keith Lee had to say, quote, I wanted to do something educational but also inspiring to tell you guys about everything since late January. Seems that's off the table for now, so with that, I will find another way to tell you guys about everything. It might simply be a video of me chatting with you, we'll see. Now, there's no word yet on what has changed for Keith Lee and what has changed for what Keith Lee had in mind. Now, these comments come after Lee's fiancée, Mia Yim, recently responded to fans who were speculating on his health and WWE status. Now, Lee's status has been up in the air for a while now. He last wrestled for WWE in February, and it was revealed in March that he has not been medically cleared to compete. Now, it's been reported that he was sidelined in February due to health reasons. Lee reportedly underwent testing after being put on the shelf in February, but there's no word yet on what came of those tests. But it has been said that Lee is actively trying to get cleared for an in-ring return to WWE. Now, Lee made his first appearance on WWE programming since February during the WrestleMania 37 weekend when he participated in the watch-along livestream for WWE NXT TakeOver Stand and Deliver Night 2 watch-along. So, look, when it comes to Keith Lee, and I know lots of people want to know, I know a lot of people want to know the situation when it comes to Keith Lee. Now, obviously, lots of people want to know what's going on with Keith Lee, and ultimately, we don't know. And I spoke about this on social media yesterday, that obviously, part of this problem is with Keith Lee at the moment is that no one really knows the full explanation as to what is going on. But that doesn't mean that we should speculate on what that is. That's not fair. At the end of the day, if we've learned anything over the course of the last 18 months when it comes to pandemics or various other issues in the world of pro wrestling, it's that, and just frankly, the wider society, it's that medical issues are private. They're private medical records. If someone, a public figure, irrespective of their public status or not, it's up to them whether they want to disclose any medical information to anyone. So Keith Lee, I'm sure that he maybe will explain everything in his own time. I'm sure he will sit down with fans, and I'm sure he will do a situation where maybe he does explain what's happening with him, or he does a sit-down Twitch stream or something or whatever, and he will explain to everyone as to what is going on with his status, with his health at the moment. What we shouldn't do, though, we really shouldn't do is speculate on what these issues are. Obviously, there is an issue. That's obvious. That's very obvious at this point. There is an issue because if there wasn't an issue, he would be wrestling for WWE right now. The most important thing when it comes to Keith Lee is that eventually he does get cleared, or eventually, most importantly, the paramount thing is that his health must come first. I'm like everyone else. I'm a huge Keith Lee fan. Obviously, I don't know if many people have been totally thrilled with how things have gone for him on the main roster. Certainly in NXT, had such a standout career, had so much promise, some great matches, one of the best big men currently under contract at WWE. The things he can do, he truly is limitless. But health is paramount. Health is the priority. So the most important thing is that Keith Lee gets healthy. Any issues that he has, he currently overcomes. I have faith. I have no doubt that he can overcome any issues that he's currently dealing with. And he will disclose this in his own time to the social media universe, to fans, to everyone around the world. Keith Lee will let us know what the situation is with him. As far as, when and how that happens, that's up to him. And it has to be up to him. When you're dealing with medical records, when you're dealing with medical information, it has to be that person's choice. Because if we start getting to a point where we're speculating, where rumors run rampant, all that kind of stuff, it's overstepping boundaries that we have to respect. And if we lose that, then we really are losing, some fundamental privacy issues there. So, again, hope, thoughts, prayers go out to Keith Lee. Obviously, the way I interpreted that message, and again, I don't want to go too much into speculation, but the way I interpreted that message is that Keith Lee was hoping that the issues that he's currently dealing with, he would be able to overcome in a relatively timely fashion, and they would be able to turn this into, as he mentioned, an educational and sort of inspiring explanation whereby he could actually, say to the fans and say, look, this is what happened. This is how I recovered from it. Here's some education on the issue. Here's some education on how I recovered from it, that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to happen in the foreseeable future. So he's having to change plans a little bit. That's what I took from that message. But again, the most important thing is that we don't speculate. The most important thing is we respect boundaries, and Keith Lee will be transparent with this. I think he's frankly being as transparent as he can be as well. You have to remember as well, it's not just Keith Lee that's probably getting this kind of information. I'm sure WWE are trying to guide him through it as well and trying to say maybe which is the best way of going around this sort of situation. Again, when we don't know the facts, we can't make an accurate judgment on what's going on. We'll have to leave that to Keith Lee. The most important thing here is that Keith Lee recovers, he gets healthy, and hopefully one day he can get back in the ring. As far as what happens in between now and then, all we can give is our support and our well wishes, which is what we certainly do here. Let's talk about WWE and New Japan Pro Wrestling. This was the big story, wasn't it, coming out last week from The Observer, was when Dave Meltzer spoke about WWE and New Japan Pro Wrestling's preliminary talks in March and April about WWE and New Japan having some kind of working relationship, WWE being New Japan's exclusive American partner. Well, we have some more information coming from it. WWE President and Chief Revenue Officer Nick Khan was not the first one in the company to bring up a possible working relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling. This is according to an update from the Wrestling Observer newsletter. It was reported last week that Nick Khan had been in talks with New Japan Pro Wrestling officials about WWE possibly becoming the official American partner for the Japanese promotion. The talks reportedly date back to late March or early April, and it was later revealed that Daniel Bryan possibly working some New Japan Pro Wrestling dates was a big topic of discussion in the negotiations. But in an update, The Observer reports that people close to the negotiations say that this was not Khan's idea at first, but it had been WWE's main point. He had been WWE's main point man in the talks as of late. There are those who believe Khan was recommended to WWE Chairman and CEO Vince McMahon to pursue the potential deal. It was noted that the deal discussed is more likely related to NXT and not a situation where top New Japan stars will be brought to WWE to lose to top WWE stars and vice versa, or some of the wild speculation from social media over the past week. Regarding Daniel Bryan, this new report says he was absolutely part of the early talks between WWE and New Japan, but that's not been the case as of late, at least not as a major aspect of the talks. One source noted that Bryan's potential involvement has not been part of any recent discussions. New Japan Pro Wrestling officials will not agree to any deal unless they feel like it's extremely beneficial to them. Why wouldn't they? It was also noted that WWE has tried to talk them in the past, and talks have gotten nowhere. But the real difference here is that Khan has never been involved until now. To be honest, look, again, we spoke about this last week, and my response was last week, I will believe it when I see it. This update from The Observer, from Meltzer himself, definitely pours a lot of water on it, because frankly, other reports have come out in the course of the last 7 days and kind of said it's not true, or it's very, very hearsay at best. The idea, and again, I don't like the sort of subtle criticism in the article where Meltzer's trying to say wild speculation on social media that big New Japan stars were going to come over to WWE and WWE stars were going to go over to New Japan. Oh, I never said that. That was what was implied in that article. You have to live by what you write in that situation, and that's what was written. And frankly, Tony Khan has come out since then. He mocked it in an interview. He said in the post Double or Nothing media scrum that he spoke to New Japan and said, shall I do this promo? They said yes, and they liked it. I don't even know if this story has, maybe it has a fraction of truth in it, because that's how these stories start, but it looks like it's not going anywhere. I don't think anyone really, truly ever felt that this was going anywhere, because WWE doesn't play well with others, and New Japan are looking at it going, we don't necessarily trust them. They've got working relationships with AEW, with Impact Wrestling, with other companies. Why would they throw all of that away for the almighty WWE when they know WWE really doesn't want to play ball in this situation? WWE, when it comes to Japan, they have a vested interest in getting into Japan. WWE has wanted to make and create an NXT Japan for years at this point. WWE has been in talks to purchase the likes of Pro Wrestling Noah, Stardom, Big Japan, Dragon Gate, and AAA as well when they wanted to do NXT Mexico. Every single time, no deal happened. The reason why they were in talks to purchase those companies is because they wanted to turn those companies into NXT Japan, NXT Mexico. The only reason really WWE would want to have a working relationship with New Japan is to get a foothold in Japan for NXT Japan. Once they have that foothold, they will sever a relationship with New Japan, or they will try and buy New Japan. That's what they did over here with NXT UK. They had all of these relationships with all of these little indie promotions here in the UK, and then eventually they started to dry up and go out of business or be bought by WWE because you had NXT UK. That's WWE's game plan in going into these countries. In the same vein that Vince McMahon in the 1980s went around, bought up the territories or bought up the talent that dried up the territories, they're just trying to do that now, but on a much bigger scale, on a global scale. Instead of going national in the United States, they're trying to go global now. In the same vein of going into the UK and either buying up the territories or buying up the talent in the territories, and then the promotions dry up. That's what they did in the UK. That's what they'll try and do to Japan. They'll try and get NXT Japan in there. They'll try and buy Pro Wrestling Noah. They'll try and buy Dragon Gate or try and buy Stardom. Or if they can't do that, they'll buy the talent. They'll go to NXT Japan, and then eventually the promotions will die off. That's what they did in the 80s. That's what they're trying to do now. In the state, instead of going national, they're going global. It's globalization, increased globalization of WWE. That's the plan here. And I would be, like I said last week, I'll believe it when I see it, and we're not going to see it. So I don't know if I really truly believe it. Daniel Bryan might work out a deal where he can go New Japan. If that's the case, good for him. He's Daniel Bryan. WWE are willing. They want to keep him on board, and maybe that's what they have to do to keep him on board. Who knows? But now the backtracking. People are saying, well, you know, the people kind of over-speculated on this one, and it's not really about big stars going back and forth like people speculated. Well, no, it was written. It's also not about Daniel Bryan, really. It's about NXT. It's about this. It's about that. It's backtracking because people realize, actually, this report, there's holes in this one. There's definitely holes in this one. So I'll believe it when I see it, and we're not going to see it. So that's really kind of the end of that one. Let's talk about WWE's edict when it comes to new signings, because WWE has reportedly put a new emphasis on hiring minority wrestlers as well as female producers. A directive recently came down from WWE management that said they want to start focusing on younger and bigger male wrestlers for tryouts once again. This is according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter. This was about the only doctrine that was changed when WWE started focusing on signing smaller Ring of Honor type talent several years ago. Furthermore, the new doctrine for talents coming in for tryouts also says they want everyone going forward to be young males with good size, with an emphasis on minorities. The quote, good size was described as legitimate 6 foot and 220 pounds. WWE recently held performance center tryouts for males and females, but there's no word yet on who is being offered contracts. On a related note, there has been some talk about hiring women as WWE producers as of late. This goes for WWE Hall of Famer Molly Holly receiving a producer's tryout at Monday's edition of Raw. The Observer adds that Holly was someone that everyone gets along with and fits what they're looking for in that role. As noted previously, Holly received an introduction to the process at Raw and is being brought back to the upcoming TV tapings to continue the tryouts. This is a good sign that she'll be hired for the role, but nothing has been confirmed as of yet. As far as hiring more females for producer roles, I'm all for it. I don't even know if gender should be a part of it, frankly. It should be about how good you are for any job, irrespective of your gender, but sometimes to make sure that you get to a point of equality, you have to force things through and put rules in place. So hiring females as producers, I'm all for it. I've been saying the same when it comes to females on the creative team for female-driven storylines. How, it's very, Bruce Pritchard. How can Bruce Pritchard relate to a storyline for Sasha Banks? How can he really get inside that character's head? Surely there should be a female representative, or at least several female representatives on the creative team. To me, that seems like a no-brainer. As far as the doctrine of hiring people that are legitimately 6 foot and 220 pounds, they can try to do that. I just don't know if the modern-day pro wrestler, there are many of those around. I'm sure there are. But at the end of the day, talent rises to the top. And WWE, it's funny because they had this kind of mindset for years and years. They scaled back from that because they realized, wait, all of these talents that we overlooked for years now came into WWE, like AJ Styles, and they say, oh, we should have hired him sooner. Oh, what a massive mistake. Well, if you didn't have those prejudices earlier on in the early 2000s, you would have hired AJ Styles. So this is what WWE does. They do this every couple of years. They decide we need more big men on the roster, and then they hire a load of people that are over 7 foot. Then they say, oh, we need good workers. All of our workers suck, so we've got to hire good workers. At the end of the day, if there is a talent on the independent scene, in a Ring of Honor, in an Impact, in a wherever, that is over and looks like they can make WWE money and is a great worker and is the king of the indies or queen of the indies, frankly, WWE will sign them because they will be concerned that they'll go to an AEW. That's the difference. WWE can say, oh, we want to hire all these people that are 6 foot and 220 pounds and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, they've got competition now. And if this edict leads to people being turned down by WWE, going to an AEW, making them money and making them stars, they'll look pretty foolish. So I find that one slightly interesting. I very much do. Let's talk about NXT, because NXT could be returning to the road very soon. The NXT brand is reportedly returning to touring in the near future. NXT wrestlers have been told they will begin running non-televised live events in the state of Florida next month in July. This is according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter. The idea to return to touring could be to run the usual 200 to 400 seat buildings that they were running before, known as the Coconut Loop of Central and Northern Florida. Now, there's no word yet on when the NXT road trip tours might return. These tours saw the top stars of NXT run shows around the country while the rest of the roster worked Florida shows. The last NXT live event took place in early March 2020 prior to the COVID pandemic shut things down. So obviously it's very beneficial. Obviously very, very beneficial for NXT. That's what WWE wanted them to be, at the third touring brand, touring mainly around smaller buildings in states like Florida, but eventually moving towards not necessarily bigger buildings, to just touring more on a national scale. Whether they can get back to that time, we'll only tell. They'll have to wait and see how Raw and SmackDown do, frankly. If they're struggling to draw, NXT will be dead in the water. The local Florida events they'll probably continue to do. Frankly, what they were just important for was for talent to learn. Talents that was maybe not even on NXT television, because this is what has got to be a bit of a problem with NXT previously, is that the talent that wasn't maybe good enough for television still didn't have a place to go and learn. They couldn't do these live events. And Triple H always says, the place you learn the most is by having matches in front of a crowd. Well, they haven't had crowds to learn for in front of in the last 18 months or so. So that was beneficial for those talents that weren't on television. Now, from what I'm aware of, they've kind of basically do live events inside the Performance Center in front of other trainees or other officials, whatever, just to keep them going through the repetitions, having matches, all that kind of stuff. But it'll be interesting, and it's good for NXT. I mentioned this when I was watching NXT on Tuesday this week, that, look, the Capitol Wrestling Center looks great. It does look great, the Capitol Wrestling Center. I love the NXT set, and I love the look of it. I know they have some live fans in there, but what I do really miss the Full Sail crowds. The Full Sail crowds were fantastic. And they had so much energy, even if it was for 400 or 500 people that were in the building. It doesn't look to me that they can get 400 or 500 people into the Performance Center in that Capitol Wrestling Center. I know previously, right prior to the pandemic, ironically, they did have a show that they couldn't do at Full Sail. They had to do it at the Performance Center, and they had a significant amount of fans there. I suppose one could say that they could reconfigure things and open things up to allow more fans to come in. I think that's probably the next step for NXT, but it's certainly, look, good news. Any return to touring is good news. So I'm excited to see NXT going back on the road. Let's talk about the Mysterios and Roman Reigns, because Roman Reigns took to Twitter to reveal after why he attacked the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, the Mysterios, this past week. Obviously, in the main event, it was a rematch from earlier on in the show where the Usos faced the Mysterios for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. Roman Reigns came in out of nowhere, destroyed Dominic Mysterio and his father, Rey Mysterio, and Roman Reigns has explained why he did it. Reigns tweeted after the show and said, if you want something done, you had to do it yourself. He said, quote, "You want something done, do it yourself. Hashtag wreck everyone and leave. Hashtag SmackDown." So it's interesting looking at this. As I mentioned, I won't go into it too much because we did do the SmackDown reaction stream last night, so be sure to check that out. But Roman Reigns and Rey Mysterio, as far as I'm aware, have never had a match. The idea of possibly Roman Reigns facing Rey Mysterio for the Universal Championship at Hell in a Cell interests me. It does. For me, though, the main storyline here is Roman Reigns and Jimmy Uso. As I mentioned last night, for me, it makes the most sense to have the exact same storyline that you had with Jey Uso. They're twins. They parallel each other. They're mirrors of each other. It would make sense for Jimmy to fall in line to come into the family to do almost the exact same storyline that they did with Jey Uso, leading to the same event as well. Jimmy Uso eventually falls in line after challenging Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship inside Hell in a Cell, the same way that Jey Uso fell in line after challenging for the Universal Championship at Hell in a Cell last October. Those are parallels. It's the George Lucas principle. It's poetry. It rhymes. It's that kind of stuff. So I think I still think that's hopefully the likely destination, but I wouldn't be against Rey and Reigns. I just don't know if that has the emotional story that the Uso Reigns story has. So I would prefer to see Jimmy Uso versus Reigns at Hell in a Cell. Johnny Gargano. I wanted to talk about this. When we spoke about NXT rather, just briefly. Current NXT superstar Johnny Gargano recently sat down for an episode of Wrestling with Brandon F. Walker to promote the upcoming NXT TakeOver in Your House event. Now, during this interview, he was asked about a lot of different aspects of NXT, shall we say. He was asked about his thoughts about the future of NXT, and this was a fascinating quote that I really wanted to talk about. He said, quote, "I've been saying for years that NXT is a viable third brand for WWE, and I very much mean that. So you got Raw, you got SmackDown, you got NXT, and anyone who says NXT is developmental, anyone who says NXT is less than, you are wrong. You are wrong. Watch our show on Tuesday night and look at the talent we have in the locker room. I will put our talent up against anyone. I think our locker room is loaded and ready to rock and roll. And when you watch TakeOver, especially a TakeOver with a live crowd, those TakeOvers with live crowds and the atmosphere, nothing can touch them. It's so amazing. It's something that I'm really proud to be a part of." Now, the idea that NXT is not developmental was a valid point when they went to the USA Network in 2019, because they were finally treated like a viable, legitimate third brand to Raw and SmackDown, akin to Raw and SmackDown. They were part of Survivor Series and all that kind of stuff, and they did have crossover, and they were on the USA Network and all that kind of stuff. But since then, they have gone back to being developmental. Johnny Gargano can say that you are wrong if you think that NXT is developmental, but he should be saying that to the chairman of WWE. Because Vince McMahon obviously thinks NXT is still developmental. They're treated still like developmental. For a hot second, they weren't. When they were involved in the build-up to Survivor Series, when they showed up on SmackDown, and again, that was only because they were stuck in Saudi Arabia at the time, being held hostage. Nevertheless, that was a period of time which went, actually, NXT is a viable third brand. They're a different brand to Raw and SmackDown. Raw and SmackDown, the analogy was the Avengers, whereas NXT is Broadway. That's fun, and that's a good analogy. But now they're developmental again. There is no argument about that. Why? Because you still have talents that are called up to the main roster. Triple H says, I hate that phrase. You're not being called up anyway, because that assumes that you go down to NXT and you don't. It's a lateral move. It's not. It's not, though. The NXT is developmental in so many facets. Again, you have talents that when Raw or SmackDown want them, they call them up. They take them away. You don't have NXT involved in the draft. They're not on a level footing of Raw and SmackDown. They weren't involved in Survivor Series last year. Yes, that had to do to the COVID pandemic and all that kind of stuff. I understand that, but there's separation between all of those brands. Raw and SmackDown are close together. NXT's off in the distance because it's developmental. Even from a financial point of view, from a contractual point of view. If you're on an NXT contract, you're on a developmental deal. You're on significantly less money than when you go to the main roster. When you go to Raw or SmackDown, most of the time, not especially in the pandemic, but most of the time, you get a new contract or you get an updated contract for more money because you're on a bigger show and you're doing more dates. The argument that NXT is no longer, or it's not developmental, you're wrong. No, Johnny Gargano, unfortunately, you are wrong. And you can keep saying that to yourself, but you've been brainwashed. You've drunk the Kool-Aid because there was a period of time where NXT was a viable third brand, but for whatever reason, Vince McMahon thinks, actually, nope, they're developmental. They are still developmental. They are still going to be in the Performance Center. They still are on smaller contracts, and that's it. That's it. And any idea that they were a third brand died when they lost to AEW Dynamite. And again, people get angry by that, but Vince McMahon looked at that and went, oh, developmental. If they were a viable third brand, they would have put big stars on that show when they were on Wednesday nights on the USA Network, and they didn't. If they really wanted to compete with AEW, they would have put a Randy Orton and AJ Styles or whoever. They would have put a big name on that brand, and they didn't. Yes, they sent Finn Balor there, but that's not enough. It is developmental, and you still get to the point. You still get to the point where if Raw or SmackDown want a talent, they get called up, and you don't get anyone in exchange. You don't, and you have people that are learning to wrestle and come through the Performance Center, all that kind of stuff. Yes, you can launch NXT Evolve and then say, well, NXT Evolve's developmental, NXT something else. But it is developmental. It is. And it certainly is in the eyes of the guy that matters the most, and that is Vince McMahon. That's the be-all and end-all of it. It's unfortunate because there was a period of time where we thought we were going to have something different, but NXT's developmental. End of. Finally, Monday Night Raw. Speaking of Raw, do we have to? A couple of things have been announced for Raw this Monday. WWE has announced a Battle Royal and 2 segments for Monday Night Raw on the USA Network. Raw will feature a Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley contract signing for Hell in a Cell. Hey, this is really what's going to get everyone tuning in, is a contract signing. Yes. Monday's Raw will also feature the new storyline of Alexa Bliss, Lily, and Shayna Baszler continue. WWE has now confirmed that Baszler will confront Bliss and Lily on Alexa's playground next week. Raw has also announced a 5-team battle royale for Raw. The winners will become the new #1 contenders for the Raw Tag Team Championships, likely for the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. The people involved are the Viking Raiders, The New Day, Lucha House Party, T-Bar, and Mace, plus RK Bro. Think it's obvious RK Bro wins that one, considering RK Bro's been having matches with Xavier Woods in recent weeks. They were feuding with The New Day a couple of weeks ago, so I would assume that we might get a situation where RK Bro going to be the next #1 contenders. Obviously, we could see a bit of a swerve. Maybe they spin off and it's just The New Day versus RK Bro, and maybe someone else like, I don't know, Mason T-Bar faced AJ Styles and Amos. Who knows? But I think it still doesn't excite me. Either way, guys, look, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these WWE news stories? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved with the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, gut the rankings, and get people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or having come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.